I am just really liking yellow variegation these days. I will never ever talk anyone out of getting an albo, so don't ever ask me to do that. Hi, I'm Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you all of the monsteras that I have in my collection. Okay, so the first one, if you watch my channel, I've been talking about this one a lot lately because it's just been going through some major improvements, so it's entertaining for me to look at it, and that is my Monstera dubia. And it is actually starting to shingle. As you can see, I was having a little bit of trouble getting it to shingle. It would just put out all these runners and I couldn't get it to really attach itself to anything. And it did put out these little tiny leaves. Let's see if it'll focus on this. Some of them were so tiny, but now that it's on this nice Lowe's paint stirring stick and starting to climb, I'm hoping the leaves will get a little bit bigger, and I'll see if I can find a picture of how they look whenever they get really big and they start to get, they lose the silver and they start to get fenestrations, and they just look really cool. So that's what I'm hoping for eventually with this plant, and now we're kind of, you know, getting closer to on the right track with that. It's gonna be a while, but we're on the right track now. Okay, so the next one is definitely one of my newer plants and newer monsteras, and that is the Monstera Adansonii aurea. And it has like that nice yellowy variegation, and this was a mid cutting, and it's starting to put out a new leaf here, and I'm hoping that it has some yellow on it. I got this from an Etsy seller, and I tried to look up their information, but I can't find it now. So I think that I must have like done checkout as a guest or something, or maybe the shop isn't still open. I don't know. I got this from an Etsy seller though, so. But yeah, I am just really liking yellow variegation these days. I would love to find a Deliciosa aurea, but those are pretty spendy. So I'm going to just enjoy this one for the time being. I'm not really a big fan of Monstera Adansonii. I don't really know, I don't really have a reason. Don't really know why, they're just not really my thing, but I do really like the variegated ones. I think that they are cute. So I don't have any of the regular ones or just the green ones, but I do have this nice variegated one, and I'm excited to see how this one grows. And my plan is to put it on either a stake or a pole, because I think they look really cool like that when they're just like growing up in a straight line with the leaves like facing down like this. So yeah, this is my Monstera Adansonii aurea. Okay, so this next one is another variegated Adansonii, which I said I'm not a big fan of Adansonii, but I must be since I have two variegated ones. So this is the albo variegated one, and this was just a cutting. It's a mid cutting, but it is starting to give me a new leaf. It's looking pretty white, but there for a bit it looked too green. So I'm hoping for something with good variegation and not bad variegation, but there's enough green on here. I feel like there will be some green on the leaf, but this is one of those plants that I feel like is kind of notorious for being a little bit tricky with the variegation, and this older leaf does not have a ton of variegation, but there is a little bit. So, oh, and the back looks kind of cool too. There's like a white and then like a minty spot and then green. So I'm excited to see what this plant does for me. I love starting out from like small plants and growing them big rather than starting with a big plant, unless I'm trying to cut it up and like recoup some of the cost. But I think it's just really fun to start out from little tiny plants and see what they just get to watch them grow up. Okay, so the next one is probably one of my all-time favorite plants, and that is the Monstera Peru. And this was, okay, I need to extend this pole. It's definitely outgrown it. And the weird thing is it's outgrown it since I brought it inside for the summer, or for the winter. It was out on my porch this summer, and since I brought it inside, it has grown all of this. It's not attached to the pole. It's just going for it. So yeah, that just kind of further solidifies my opinion about moss poles. I don't think they're completely necessary. I think the conditions are more important than the moss pole for getting your plant not to produce runners. And this is not even, it's not even in good conditions. It's just like hanging out on top of May's crate. So this is May's plant now. But the Monstera Peru was actually the first expensive plant that I ever bought. It was like $50, and I could not believe I spent that much on a plant. And I was so nervous while it was being shipped, which is funny now because now I'm just like, eh, whatever. And I ship lots of plants to people, and I'm just not nervous about it. But this was terrifying for me. What did I do? Did I like, so it was on the porch and I got it, and there was something about it that confused me. So I messaged the seller, and they were kind of confused, and they're like, no, that's normal. But it's done really great for me ever since. It's grown a ton. I've taken a ton of cuttings from it, and I know that they did get like cheaper there for a while, and you can find them at like Walmart now, but I still don't regret buying this. I think this is probably a better plant than what I would have gotten from Walmart. So I think that's a big part of the reason I don't get a lot of runners. And yeah, I will say this is a plant that's very difficult to propagate. So if you're trying to propagate Monstera Peru, don't expect every single cutting to root, because it won't. But I think this texture is just beautiful, and this is still one of my very favorite plants, and probably always will be, just because of this texture. Okay, so the next one is my Monstera siltepecana, and I did have this climbing up a pole out in the greenhouse, but I decided I wanted it to be trailing. So it's kind of, oh, and I just watered it and it's dripping. I wonder why I thought that was a good plan. It's just gonna have to be kind of messy. But yeah, I got this as a one leaf cutting, or was it? It was like a cutting with one leaf and a bunch of runners, and I just cut it up and rooted everything. And now I have several plants in here. It doesn't look its best right now because I did just take it off the pole that it was on and pot a bunch of cuttings into here. But I think this is a really cool leaf texture and color, and it's really easy. It's basically like trying to grow pothos. It's a very, very easy plant. And I think, I could be wrong, I do not keep up with the big box store plant scene, but I know they used to sometimes get them in at like Lowe's and stuff, so might be something to look for. Those plants are just never what I hope that they will be though, so if that's the plant you want, I would just like get one from a decent seller. Not that Lowe's isn't a decent seller. It's not what I'm trying to say, but If you're a plant person, you probably know exactly what I'm trying to say. So, no shade, Lowe's. Okay, so this one doesn't look the best right now. I need to get this climbing up something. Well, it's kind of a funny story. I did not know that there was a second vine in here somehow. So this entire vine was a surprise to me. I found this growing behind another plant. I knew about this one, and I had this propped up against a board out in the greenhouse, but the other one is a surprise, and it is like probably 3 feet long. I don't know how to estimate that, but this is a Monstera Collection, and it looks a lot like the Monstera Peru, but I believe it will produce fenestrations when it gets more mature. So I really need to get this onto like a stake or a pole out there so that it'll start to do that eventually. And also this 4-foot long vine, I'm probably gonna end up cutting it up and propagating it because it's just not practical the way it is right now. But yeah, this is a Monstera Collection, and I'll show you what it looks like compared to the Monstera Peru. They look very, very similar, but they are different. Please don't fall. Okay, so yeah, here they are next to each other. This one is like, there's just a different texture, and these leaves are a lot bigger than the Monstera Peru. I personally like the Monstera Peru better. I feel like there's probably just not a need for both of these, but this one should produce fenestrations when it gets larger. This one I don't think ever will. I think it just does this one thing, which is a cool thing. So yeah. Okay, now I think that's all of my small ones, so I'm gonna have to move the camera because a lot of these have just gotten too big to show. That's the thing about monsteras, is they get really big really fast. So if you don't have a lot of space, maybe a monstera is not for you. I guess depending on the kind, like the Siltepecana should be fine, but like the Deliciosa, those things get out of hand pretty quickly with those. So I'll show you how big they are. Okay, so you can probably kind of see it right here, but this is my Monstera Deliciosa, and this lives out of my greenhouse, and you can't go wrong with one of these. They're just classic, you know? And it's starting to get like the mid-rib fenestrations, if you can see that back there. And it has a sibling right next to it that were both grown from mid cuttings, like at the same time, from the same mother plant. So this one I got as just like a little sprig from Tasha at Hickory Lane, like right after she opened up, like right when she started doing the mobile truck thing. I saw an ad on Facebook and I thought it was so cool. So I talked my husband into going after work one day, and we got a little Monstera, and she was so nice, and that may have sparked this whole addiction I've got here. So yeah, but I hope I can find a picture of it, but it was so tiny, and a couple years ago it got really, really tall, so I cut it all the way down to the base, and this has grown from just a whole bunch of the mid cuttings. So yeah, it has definitely come a long way in maybe, I guess it's been several years, like 3 or 4 years. What year was that? I think it was 2019. So it'll be almost 4 years this spring that I've had this plant. So yeah, it's kind of sentimental to me for that because it's one of my first ones. And I don't know that I would feel that way about it if I had just gotten one that was this size already from a garden center. Like I was saying before, it's just cool to start them from little plants and grow them really big. There's something about it, you know? I have more of a connection to this plant because of that. Okay, so the next one, if you watch my videos, you've probably seen this one several times. And I repotted it in my most recent video, but that is my Monstera Constellation. And this plant is huge. Like, it doesn't really strike me how big it is until I pick it up, but these leaves are just massive. But this is one of my favorite plants for sure. I mean, look at this leaf. And I got this from was it a top cutting? I think it was a top cutting. I traded a cutting of a different plant for this, and it has grown so well. This is just a really nice plant. This plant has great genes, and I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to do with it when it gets bigger. This is probably one that I will have to keep taking cuttings of so it doesn't get gigantic. As cool as that would be, but I don't think I have the space for something like that. But it's started to get a little bit more variegated with each new leaf, and the variegation on a Thai constellation is stable, so you don't really have to worry about reversion like you would with an albo. So that's a really cool thing about this, but it definitely grows slower, so just something to think about, because I know a lot of people, I'll come back to that while I'm holding the other plant. Okay, so this is my Monstera albo, and this plant has grown a ton for me. This is definitely one of my fastest growing plants and probably one of my favorites. Is this a better angle? Probably not. I probably look really goofy. Hopefully this will be the thumbnail if I can get this plant to stop shaking, maybe. Okay, so this, yeah, I look silly. This is my Monstera albo. There's two plants in here right now. They came from the same, is that a new leaf? Yeah. How'd I miss that? See at the top there. This plant is really too big for me to be showing it very well. Okay. This is my Monstera albo, and I know that it's hard for me to speak seriously at all right now because I feel so goofy the way I'm holding this. But if you're trying to decide between the Thai and the albo, which I was on the fence about too a couple of years ago, I knew I wanted both, but sometimes you just gotta give it some time. So what I did was get the albo because it grows faster, and then you can take cuttings and hopefully trade someone for a Thai. That's what I did, and this is actually pretty heavy, so I'm kind of out of breath and out of shape. I've started to exercise, which is just kind of crazy because I never really used to, but I've been doing it all the time except for when I rest. Okay, it's hard for me to be serious with this plant right now, but anyway, I started exercising. Aren't you proud of me? I just, like, when I got COVID, it kicked me in the ass, and I'm like, I'm too young for this. I gotta start taking care of myself. So that's what we're doing. I'm trying to take care of myself like I would take care of my plants, you know? So anyway, here is my lovely Monstera albo, one of my favorite plants. I will never ever talk anyone out of getting an albo, so don't ever ask me to do that. Okay, so that is gonna be it for this video. I think those are all of my Monsteras. If I have any more, I'll just add like a credits at the end of everything I forgot. But yeah, it's one of my favorites, but I don't have as many of them. There are a couple that I would love to add to my collection one day, but I don't know that I want to spend the money, and I don't have a ton of room. So those two are the Monstera Aurea, the Deliciosa. Those are so pretty. I've got my eye on those. And the Monstera Esqueleto. I think those are really cool, even though I'm not. So the thing with like the really fenestrated leaves, like I think they're cool, but the thing that stops me from getting more plants like that are that I want to feel like I'm getting more plant for my money, and the fenestrations just make me think that I'm not, even though that's, does that make sense? Does anyone else think like that when they're plant shopping? I don't know. So yeah, that's what stopped me from acquiring those. But anyway, yeah, those are all my monsteras. They're definitely some of my favorites, even though I don't have as many as I do philodendrons. But yeah, but also let me know if there's any cool monsteras that I might not know about that you think I should check out. Cause I might need more, you never know. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Queen City Tropicals, and I will see you again soon.